marathon of these.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I don't know why. Oh, I do know why, but uh, we're live. We're joined this hour by Elvia Rubalcava. She's a poet, playwright, producer, director, and co-founder of Cholas Chicanas and Chisme, and also a director at over at the Fullerton Arts Museum. Very, very thrilled to have her. I always mess it up and had she going in there somewhere or some other thing in there, but I got it right this time, because I got
You
closer.
didn't get it right, but you got it a little close, yeah.
I got it a little close this time, unlike usual. All right, so really, really thrilled to have you. Can you but let's start the story in the beginning. Long before you're managing you're the director over at the Fullerton Arts Museum.
I'm the museum operations person. I'm not the director.
So this is why I was messing up. Okay, okay.
No, it's okay.
The operational, the person that puts upon the programming. Before you're doing that, before you founded Cholas Chicanas y Chisme, before any of that, like you were someone that wanted to get in the arts. So tell us that story. Tell us from the beginning. How did it start, and how did you like first get out there, getting your work out there?
Sure. I've been writing forever, since I was a little kid. I can definitely show a display of all my journals. But I didn't start putting myself out there as a writer until about, I would say 12 years ago, 12, 13 years ago. And then really pushing through about 8 years ago. I got into playwriting 8 years ago, but poetry's always been my first love and my first language, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, it I've had stuff published when I was in high school. I've had poems published in chapbooks. My last um, piece was published, actually, two poems. One was part of an anthology on Latina stories. It's inside Our Stories, a collection of personal narratives. Um, and that poem inspired my first play, Sala de Amor y Guerra. So, and that's what happens a lot. A lot of my poetry or short stories inspire plays or other work. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about how do these things interact with one another? Like being a poet, a playwright, or you sit down and you write a line. How do you know this is destined for a play? This is destined for a poem. This is destined for some other form of writing. How do you make those decisions as a writer?
Um, so so for Palomas, it's and I can share that in a little bit. Um, it was written like on a Saturday morning. I was in my own place. I for the I needed help getting my place ready, so I hired someone to come and help me. And I always felt guilty whenever I did that, so I would clean along, and it brought back a lot of and she was listening to music, and it brought back a lot of memories of my childhood, with my sisters and my mom and cleaning. And I as I was cleaning, I in my office, I just started writing, and I wrote um, this prose piece. And as I wrote it, years later, after I wrote it, I took a playwriting class at Fullerton College. I took a number of creative writing classes one year, just for fun. I was a legal studies major, with emphasis in peace studies and political science over at Chapman, many years ago. And I never got a chance to take all those fun classes. For me, I always wanted to be a writer. But I grew up with a father that, you got to be a lawyer, got to be, something tangible. So I did that, and I look back at some of my work, and it inspired Sala de Amor y Guerra. And so although there's a little bit of dialogue in the poem, those voices just kept talking to me. And that's what happens with playwriting. If something I hear the conversation in my head, I see the play before I start writing it. And sometimes I've done that where I write complete things, and I need to be better at writing them down.
Yeah, yeah, but no, that's so it travels through. Can you share a poem with us?
Sure. So let me share that one. Okay. And this was first published with Mujeres de Maíz. Shout out to Mujeres de Maíz in their zine. All right. Juan Gabriel and other Mexican greats, like Lola and Vicente, will always take me back to Saturday mornings, deep cleaning the house with my sisters and our madrecita. My big sisters and I used to fight over who would get the easiest part of the house, la sala. We had the front of the house, the back, the living room, or the kitchen to choose from. Being the youngest, I always got the living room. There were definitely some life threats, rolling of the eyes, and pounding of the fist of all the injustices older Mexican sisters had to put up with their bratty, chubby hermanitas. Ay, esa Susanita. But it was the music and threatening big black eyes of our mother that usually calmed our house down and got us working again. My brothers and father would be outside working on the yard or a project or escaped into a computer expo in anywhere land. In those few hours, concentrating on the beautiful home that my Santa Madre created, and finally, after a long, silent treatment from my sisters, we would share so many laughs, cuentos, and lessons by my madrecita. The part that stays in my soul so heavenly from those dusty days was that from any corner of our home, we could hear Amaz ever so often outsing the greats, not in a high whisper, but in a loud thunder of a voice that rang out as if her life depended on it. I don't know what death will be like, but there are two things that I know for sure. I will take with me in my final moments my father's jolly laughter and my madrecita's echoing, heartbreaking, but extremely striking voice sing out Paloma Negra, ¿dónde andarás? Ya no juegues con mi honor parandera. Si tus caricias han de ser mías, de nadie más. So
Wow.
I wrote that 10 years ago.
Yeah, beautiful.
And I've shared it at the Fullerton Museum Center's open mic night. And my mom, if she's there, I'll have her join me on stage. She joined me on stage, and she sang that part. I don't have that voice, but she has a very beautiful, striking voice. And so, whenever possible, if I perform that, I try and bring her along so she can share.
What was it like to have her on stage with you?
Um, it was great. You know, my mom's 74 years old, and she's strong and a fighter, and she just not only shares or sings in my work, but she's performed other songs. And at first she'd be really nervous, and then she'd be like, no. And then she's like, well, print out the lyrics for the song. And then she's like, no. And then she would get the courage and do it. And but you know, I'm also a community organizer, and I've done many things, but my parents have definitely been my role models as a writer and as a community organizer. She's always spoken up for people, for injustices that were happening in my school or in our neighborhood, but also really talented. Both my parents and I have siblings who are great storytellers, you know. So it was, I have some of the tapes, and you could hear me crying in the background or just holding my breath. But it's surreal. I'm enjoying every single moment. I mean, especially now, I lost my dad back in August. So now every moment, every little thing that she does, it's like my eyes are on her. You know, I want to cherish every moment I have with her, especially when we can share our art together.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you definitely come from an artistic family. Can you tell us a little bit about some of like the venues that you go to share your work?
Okay. I've performed at my play. Uh, God, what is the name of the new play that I have with CCC? Oh, Manitas. That was performed at a reading of it, a stage reading of it at the Mujeres de Maíz live art event in March. It was like a weekend full of art and beauty, and it was like the weekend before everything shut down, right? So the actors performed my piece, and it's a play about two sisters who are traveling to Oakland for a writing retreat with Sherry Moraga, who's a huge mentor and hero. She wrote to me. So we shared that. I've been featured with Sunday Jump, an amazing Filipino spoken word group. I've um, I've had my work um, read and, or like I said, published a couple of different zines for Mujeres de Maíz. I was involved a couple years with Seeds of Resistance in Santana, and we also put together a zine with them. I was involved with um, Breath of Fire, but more as a board president and producer. I didn't really share any work with them. I didn't. My first play was with CCC, and but I did help direct and produce a festival of queer stories. Yeah.
So this is we're gonna try and send this out to a broad cross section of people. So some people might not be as familiar with some of these things that I know definitely within our community, within the LA poetry community, within the Chicago community here in Southern California, very familiar with. But for those who might not be familiar with, can you tell us about Mujeres de Maíz and the kind of legacy and establishment that they built?
Yeah, definitely. Mujeres de Maíz, I'm not part of the group, but I've been involved with them. And I know several of the mujeres that are involved with them. They do a number of, actually, before I really blew up or started going into my own, I remember going to a lot of their events and attending. They would do poetry processions. They would do, I've been going for years to their live art show. They do workshops. Still today, they're still doing workshops virtually. One of my friends, Nadia Cepeda, shout out to Nadia. I invited her to be our talkback moderator for CCC, and she did a wonderful job, analyzing, discussing, and being a moderator for that talkback when we had our show going on at Casa 0101 Theater. But these organizations, so like Mujeres de Maíz, like Breath of Fire, and Chicanas, Cholas, and Chisme, aim to really be a supportive network for mujeres. And they've done, again, a number of workshops, not just on writing but on a number of things, on like vegan cooking, on just art, just also political activism. All these organizations are really important. I know, like CCC, we put on a show during Women's Her Story Month, but we're active all year. Mujeres de Maíz does the same thing. They're extremely active. And then a lot of women do work outside of that. And they've traveled. Our show has traveled to Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz, to the New Orleans Fringe Festival, and a number of other institutions and colleges. We were in Chula Vista and Tijuana.
So can you tell us how a bit about Chicanas, Cholas? I got it right this time. Chicanas, Cholas. I wrote it down this time. I wrote it down. So get the order right, the words right. And again.
I know. I'm gonna quiz you at the end.
Yeah. All right. Can you tell us how the group came together and where that name came from?
Okay. So I got involved their second year. I did see their show their first year. My sister, Sylvia Chavez, a fellow writer, was involved. She was taking a writing course at Casa, and they, Josefina Lopez, realized that there isn't enough women directors in theater, and she wanted to have an or a festival that highlighted some of these escritoras, but also that gave opportunities to women directors, female directors. And so they put it up, and it was at Casa 0101 Theater. They had a smaller theater. We called it Little Casa. And it was like a black box theater. And it fit possibly like 50, 60 people. And it was only going to be up for like 2 weekends that first year, and it sold out, and they extended it for another weekend. And then when the following year, when I got involved, they moved it to the larger theater. And again, we would sell out. We're going 8 years strong, and we've been consistently have sold out crowds. Unfortunately, this year, COVID happened at the start. So we were supposed to be up for, I believe, 5, 6 weeks, and we only got to do 2 weeks of it. Our stage is still up there. Our posters are still up. You know, we're hoping to come back in the summer if things normalize. But because of all of that, we started a podcast called Love Locuras Arte. And it's a way to just connect to our community. We've done a number of different podcasts with some of our CCCers on self-care, on poetry, on short story, on playwriting. Our next one's on comedy. So we're trying to do as much as possible to still stay connected to our community.
So what have been some of the unique what have been some of the unique challenges as well as like kind of surprises like in migrating a lot of the work from person on stage performances to internet activity.
I think just being really learning the technology, like seeing what works best. We meet once a week. Every Thursday night we meet as many of the women as possible. We're a group of about 20 women. Sometimes it's been as big as 30. But we meet every Thursday. We check in. We do a writing exercise through Zoom. And again, it's like getting to not all of us are tech savvy, so it's getting used to the platform, downloading the platform, seeing what platforms are free or low cost for us to use. And we've always been, what I love about CCC is that it's not just a group of writers. We produce our own work, and many of us direct the work. And so it's all women who like are working full time, who have families, but they're go-getters, they're hustlers for their art and for their community, and they'll do whatever it takes. So maybe we took a week off or two, but we just hit the ground running. We have a special treat later on this week. We're going to release a music video of, of us. Not, we're lip syncing, but it's a sing along. And it just shows snippets of our theater festival. And then, but yeah, we have a lot going on. We're hoping to put an anthology together. Again, we have 8 years worth of work. We have hundreds of plays, and we want to get our work out there. We want to go international. We want to go national. So there's a number of projects that we're working on.
Right. So I think that, sometimes so far what I've experienced and what I've noticed from others is that there's aspects of the internet that are kind of like a sad imitation of our normal lives. But then there's other things about the internet that are really good. Like, for instance, the fact that distance doesn't really matter, right? The fact that you talk about going international, all you gotta do is find someone, to give you like a Parisian audience, and that's that. You can do it from the comfort of your own home. So are there elements that you plan to keep from this moment once it's over, when the quarantine ends? Like certain activities that like, what, we should have been doing this all along. We're going to keep doing this.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely keep the podcast going. Before, when we were thinking about doing it, we're thinking like quarterly or monthly. But because, a lot of us didn't have too much to do, and we wanted to keep active and give as much opportunity to interview a lot of the women, we're doing it once a week. We release them on Sunday. This Sunday we're going to be taping. Actually, Saturday we'll be taping one, and Sunday we'll be taping a couple more, and then we slowly release them. I think that's something that we can do, and that can be available. This next one with playwright Suzanne Linares, we're going to be sharing her new play, No Te Vayas. So it'll be attached to our podcast. A lot of the times the women, after we interview them, they'll share their short story or their poem. This time it'll be the whole play. So we're excited about that. And I think that's one way where we can go international, national, and continue and keep that going. But also training other mujeres all over of like how we do what we do. How you organize writers. I mean, This year we had about 2 new writers, and whenever a new writer comes in, I usually like try and work with them because I've been there. I wanted to pull out because it's frightening, especially when you're writing from a personal experience or from something traumatic. A lot of times they want to pull out at the last minute. So it's a lot of coaching, a lot of mentoring. Um, but we've had amazing work. This year we also introduced having a dramaturg because coming on as a producer this year with Claudio Duran, it was really important for me that each year, like, I want to better myself and I want to better CCC and I want our writing to be tight and I want our writing to be ready to go for the next festival. Or if they want to, these are 10-minute plays, these are short plays. So for them to expand it if they wanted to. So we had a dramaturg who is Angela Moore. She did a phenomenal job. We worked together in editing and tightening up the scripts and working with the playwrights and making sure that the stories were solid. And we're really proud of our work.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. I wanna move the conversation. It's kind of a general topic about like this what is art in this quarantine period, and how it's seen as non-essential, but at the same time that seems kind of ridiculous. But before we do that, can you share with us another poem?
Yeah. Mm. So I'm going to share. I'll share from the book that the poetry reading at Avenue 50 that we were part of, La Palabra. They made this cool little chapbook. Thank you so much, Angelina, and everyone that did that. This is a very special poem. I have a series of poems on my best friend Sonia Guzman. So this is called Last for Sonia. The last conversation we had, huddled together at your bedside, stirred your Bible-thumping mother as she hung her head in prayer before her nightly sleep on a cot beside you. But her slight growl was our beginning of further giggles like the mocosas we felt like at that moment. Oh, what a moment. Our last palabras to each other were the quick I love yous we typically shared after our typical goodbyes. It was a rushed love before the nurses came to help you have some sort of sleep. I love you too, was all that you had time for after my 3 besitos on your left hand. I was too afraid to cause you additional pain by reaching over for a kiss on your cheek or a hug. If I knew they were to be the last words we shared between us, the last laughs, the last moments of sisterhood, with an unrelated twin, I would have crushed back the herd of medically licensed hands and sang you a song of my love, read you a bedtime story of our fat kid adventures, ripped out my hair and stitched us together to whisper to you in sleep, my love, of my love. But no, with my muted last words heavy in my closed mouth, my body walked away, down the hall, falling into each linoleum square, with a loud, loaded thump, a half dozen reassuring steps, forcing me to head home, curve the roads of the 15 North, with your soft, quick, I love you, still humming inside me. So that
That's
was
really
called
great.
Fast.
Yeah. Yeah, that reading was really incredible. A lot of thing we're doing here is kind of like trying to preserve oral histories. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and because it's gonna be kind of seen as like a time capsule thing. That's for later down the line. Um, but what's so it's really good to get information about some of these venues that the things are. Can you tell us a little bit of Avenue 50 and the reading series there, La Palabra?
Yeah, La Palabra, I believe it was my second or third time performing there. It's a once a month open mic night. Open mic night, invitational, but I believe she allows for an open mic part of it. The that that reading that we did that we were a part of, Angelina did a marathon of poetry where we couldn't introduce ourselves or say anything about the poem, and it was just read a poem after another. And I think some
The
people
people still
didn't
did.
huh?
They still did. They don't
They
listen.
still did. So maybe those people won't be invited back now.
Yeah.
I don't think they did. I wasn't one of them, right?
No, nor was I.
Yeah. Oh, I loved your reading. I loved how
Thank you.
I've always loved how you start off somewhere and then you end up at the mic. And I remember, and going into that topic, um, I remember seeing you and being like, I need to get him to the Fullerton Museum Center's open mic night. We had a really great exhibit called Instruments of Change, where we had invited muralists from Brazil and Mexico, and they had murals all up over the walls. And I just kept imagining your poetry echoing all over that. So I remember seeing you there and in that space, and it was just crowded. You know, there was people standing, and she just has created such a safe and wonderful environment for poets. You know, and I got to meet new poets, and I got to buy new chapbooks and new books from poets. Um, and it's one that I try and make when I'm out there. I'm from Orange County. I'm from Santa Ana. I live in Fullerton now, but LA is basically my second hometown. I'm there a lot.
Yeah. So right now, oh, got a little echo. So since I'm gonna have an echo, I gotta mute you, and then I'll ask a question. I'll be quiet.
Okay.
So in right now we have a situation, in we're obviously under quarantine, and there are people who still out there working, essential workers, and all love and admiration and safety to them. But it's kind of interesting that the art is not seen as like essential. And yet art is the way in which people interact with each other. Like when you're young, you got posters of your favorite movies, bands, etc. People write poems to each other. They become and lose friendships over the meaning of books. Art is how we live our lives. So what do you think about this question of art as like an essential component?
Um, can you imagine going through quarantine without art, without film, without music, without poetry or short stories? Like, I think we would have had people writing inside themselves, inside their homes, not knowing what to do. And I think that's the reason why we meet, and it's important for us to meet every Thursday, but also connect and have different outlets. When all this started happening, I, I'm 43 years old. I was working when 9/11 happened, and for the County of Orange with Orange County Human Relations. And then in 2008, with the recession, I was working in the private sector, and both times I got laid off. For Orange County Human Relations, as a community leadership specialist, and I did outreach, in Fullerton, and that's how. Um, After graduating from college, all I wanted to do was work in Santa Ana. Every job since is outside of Santa Ana, which is funny. But anyway, so one of a former director of Fullerton pulled me in, and I have been working for Fullerton for a long time. But now that I work for the museum and I work in the arts with a theater, Casa 0101 Theater, it's scary because I knew right away that arts is always the first to get cut. Arts is seen as not an essential, even though it should be. I'm very lucky that because the museum that I work for is owned by the city of Fullerton, that I'm considered an essential worker. And so I'm very lucky that I'm still working Monday through Friday and being able to bring a paycheck into my family. But at the same time, it's in the back of my head. Like, I hope the city always sees the museum and the work that we do and the libraries and, music halls and different areas as essential, as important. And even though our doors are closed, we're giving out art kits that our museum educator, Amy All, puts together every Wednesday. We're creating different videos. We shut down before we could open the Little Golden Books Golden Legacy exhibit. And so no one has seen it. The public hasn't been opened, but we paid for this videographer, Birdman, who is an amazing artist, come and film it. And we're going to do a virtual, not opening, but a virtual viewing of our exhibit. But I'm also really scared. It's not being selfish and wanting our plays to go up again as CCC, but Casa has been a home for me and for so many Latinx folks. And I wish I had all the money in the world to continue to donate. And I do donate. I'm a I'm a 350 donor, which means they're asking people to donate at least $25 a month just to help keep this space open. And there's a lot going on. This Tuesday is Giving Tuesday Now, which is working on supporting nonprofits and art spaces. So if you can, go to those venues that you appreciate, that you care about, or to your local artists and try and donate, especially that day or any day that you can. But definitely, I've been with the museum for 5 years. They knew I was a writer and a poet. They gave me the art walk open mic night, and I ran with it. You know, I've been able to bring artists like you, bring Breath of Fire, who shared work, or Sunday Jump has performed, Alex Alfaro, so many different artists, and being able to carry their book at our gift shop, or do a reading, release their book there. I wanted to see the museum as a diverse, welcoming place, and so I wanted not just the stage to show a diverse voice and background, but also the audience. And we sometimes it's standing room only on our first Fridays. And tonight would have been an art walk open mic night, but we're closed because of COVID. Um, but I'm really glad that I'm here talking about that work and talking about my poetry and playwriting, because it's really important. We don't know what's going to happen. You know, we're talking in circles that it's going to be a combination, you know, in the theater and in the museum of there's going to be people, even though everything gets opened up again, there's going to be people who are still too afraid to go out. So it's going to always have to be a mix, I think, moving forward of virtual and in real life experiences. Your mic is.
Yeah, I, I'm not the most tech that like as much as I do this,
Yeah.
still not. I'm still like, all right. We have a question from the audience that says, "Is the group CCC?" Which I'm gonna follow your lead on that. Is the group CCC only a small group, or do you include any artists from outside the world, outside the area as well?
Yeah, every year we open it up. The only parameters is that you have to have had some playwriting experience or have taken a class. CASA provides low cost playwriting classes, like $10 or less, and no one is turned away from lack of funds. Um, but our group, God, one year we had like 25 playwrights, and sometimes people fall off. But we ended up having to do 5 minute plays because everyone stayed. And at that time, we weren't limiting the plays. I think moving forward, because we have such a big group, we are limiting the plays. We're trying not to do more than 10 or 12 per year, but we open it up. It's not a select group of people. We try and open as much as possible. People are interested, we let them know what's happening. We're going to start doing playwriting workshops. On Saturday, this Saturday, we're going to start doing from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., 9 to 11 CCC writing hours. And it's just to get all of us to start writing for the new plays, our new festival in 2021. But, inviting the public to write with us, to use that time to be creative, to either write for the whole 2 hours or just a portion of it, or revising your work. But no, I was actually hoping that Angelina would join, or other people outside. It's great to have new voices.
Yeah. So how did getting involved? How did you end up getting involved with or taking it to Casa, and how did that? I mean, what's your partnership been like with Josefina Lopez? I guess that's more my question.
Like, is she my homegirl?
What's that? Yeah, like,
No, you know
Jesus.
what? I just shared. So this is funny. A long time ago, when the plays, when her movie came up, Real Women Have Curves, that's how I was introduced to her. And back in the day, I was, in my 20s, I was going to clubs and stuff, and I was approached or to help push her movie or advertise her movie. We were going around in lowriders with her poster of Real Women Have Curves on the side, and we would give people flyers and let them know about the film. So that was kind of like my first, not really introduction of like the movie, but the first introduction. She wrote this book called "You Too Can Be a Chingona," and it was like it was a chapbook. It was thin, and Ruben Martinez from the Martinez bookstore in Santa Ana years and years ago when I was still in college gave it to me, and I loved it. It had all these like to-dos and poems and so forth. And I remember every time that there was a freshman or someone new that was coming in, I would give it to them to read because it was very empowering. And so that was my first introduction to Josefina. And I remember years later, I just shared this story with a friend. Years later, I lost it. I gave it to somebody and I never got it back. And I remember emailing her and telling her how much I appreciated her work and how that book really helped me and other mujeres that I mentored, but that I lost it. And she mailed me a copy. And it was amazing. You know, she didn't know who I was. I was just some, and this wasn't too long ago. It was like, I would say 12, 12 years ago. And then, um, and then I got invited again, seeing my sister's work with CCC. I've been involved, and she's been great. She's definitely somebody that I look up to and admire. To have that space, Casa 0101 Theater, running it along with, Emmanuel Deliage. It's it's a really fabulous place, and I really admire the work and how honest she is. I've worked with multiple Chicana Latina writers. I've gone to workshops for them, and she was the first time when I took a workshop with her that she was just so open and raw and didn't hold back. And I love that about her. I love that, she wasn't ashamed or she found, she definitely knows who she is and what she's about. And I appreciate that as writer
Yeah.
and artist.
So if you were to describe, wait, oh man, it's echo. Let me mute this again. So if you were to describe your approach to workshopping, how would you describe the kind of the way you conduct your workshops?
I love doing workshops. Some of my favorite experience was working with this program called Inside Out Writers. And we had a pilot program over at the Orange County Juvenile Hall where I taught creative writing to 18 to 20-year-olds, males, inside juvenile hall. And it was crazy. It was a very, it's a really great program. I did it for a year, and but they would check me, they would count my pens. They'd make sure if I came in with 12 pens, I'm leaving with 12 pens. They wouldn't really look at our curriculum, and I had our own curriculum, and then I would bring stuff. But it was an amazing experience working with these young men and, teaching them about poetry, teaching them about, short story, and just tapping into their voice and letting them vent on paper or create story on paper. But also, like, if they couldn't write, I didn't bite their head off. They could sketch or we would talk. But yeah, I haven't. Well, being again a part of as a co-producer at CCC, we try not to do too many workshops now, but we do writing. We do start us off so we could write about the theme. This year was Women in Her Story, so highlighting like the unsung heroes of the women. But so get them started and doing different writing workshops, and I love it. I think depending on what's going to happen, in the future, I'd love to go back to school. I'd love to go into the classroom at some point, or even if the classroom is virtual, or just with continuing the work that I'm doing with CCC or other women and men, and just continue to teach. Yeah.
So it's so fascinating that you create this platform that is kind of I mean, it's interesting because on the one hand, it's you know you perform your plays, you produce your plays, so you know you're all like professional artists, working artists. I mean, if you have other jobs, you're still professional artists, you're still professional
Right.
working artists, but you're also workshop leaders. You're also it's an entire platform. I mean, it's on the one hand you're producing art, getting the art out there. You're also training the next generation of artists. You're also you're talking about getting an anthology, talking about working with Josefina Lopez. So you're both like kind of climbing. You're both like building, your organization, by working with these people who are more established. You're also established. You're also establishing. So like it's kind of like it's kind of this is really kind of it's
That's how
quite.
you do it. That's how I was raised, and that's how. And when I say raised, well, raised by my parents because they were definitely helping out in their community
Mhm.
and the things that they did. But how I was raised by amazing women. I've been like lucky enough to take multiple workshops with Sherry Moraga, with Ana Castillo, with a number of different writers, and or even just the camaraderie and the collaboration between all the organizations, like with Sunday Jump. I've been featured there. I've been able to feature them, at my locations, and just working together. We need to lift each other up. It's not a race. It's not a competition. This in November, I was invited as an artist, an individual artist, to perform at Orange Coast College. But I felt the need to bring two women organizations together, and that was CCC and Breath of Fire, the Orange County Latina ensemble. So it would have been a nice paycheck, but it was important to me. And I know that arts struggle, and I wanted to share that stipend with them, but also the experience of coming together and performing at a college, and also providing that for the students and for the Multicultural Center that invited us. So we performed two plays, Breath of Fire and CCC, and it was an amazing experience. And that center has continued to reach out to see who else I can invite. Unfortunately, when I was giving those names or those contacts, everything shut down. But it's a network. It's how can we help each other? How can we develop our work and our voice together? And what I learned, and I was thinking about this earlier today. Um, I hate using the term hustling, but you have to. I love being a producer in that I'm in charge of pushing my work out there. I'm in charge of making those things happen for myself and for the groups that I'm involved in. And I remember running into Gustavo Arellano, who's a friend of mine, who we went to Chapman together, and I always saw that in him. He said, like, he pushed me before I really pushed myself out into the world. Like, you got to put yourself out there, you got to hustle. And even though he had published books, he had to be the one that was pushing all his work out there. And I see that in you, like calling out universities, calling out people, like, hey, who needs me to do a workshop or speak at your university? And I saw that, and I get inspired. Like, Diana Bourbano is another person that I look up to, and her work is everywhere, and she gives out her work. Her work is, like, everywhere I turn, her play is up somewhere, and that's something that I strive to. I love poetry and I love writing short stories, but playwriting has really hit a nerve with me. And I also want to see, like, my plays and my work, because everything I write is from a creative nonfiction point of view. Everything's from my experience, and again, not to be selfish because I want to see my name out there, but everything I've experienced, I've learned from, but I've learned from other people, and I know the struggles that I faced, that other people could find inspiration to find their own voice and story.
Yeah. Well, I think that oftentimes that we are humility is one thing, right? It is one thing to be like humble in general when you exude it, right? But to be humbled, to be humiliated is a different thing, right? And I feel like oftentimes we're told to lay low, to keep our heads down, to not like to not actually claim, to not just promote the quality of the work that we actually produced, and so I think that's really important for us to do that. But as you do things, as your poetry career grows, as your playwright grow, your role as a playwright, your prominence, as your general prominence, as that grows, that's not about ego. That's that though, because those aren't trophies, those are tools.
Right.
And those are hammers that you can knock doors down with. Those are hammers you can build houses with, and other people can come into the house. I mean, so I think that we have to develop a different relationship with success than
Right.
like, oh no, you're gonna think I think too much of myself. No, this is a way of doing things that we can do more, and not just for ourselves.
Right. Definitely. And I think that's the reason why I started my own podcast. Claudia, our other producer, she's running and introduced us to, or got us to do the podcast for CCC. But I learn better when in doing. And so I downloaded the app myself, and I'm like, you know what? I know I've been talking about writing, publishing a book of a collection of short stories and poems, and definitely publishing some of my plays. But I was just like, I'm going to do a podcast about my writing. And it's not, it's not interviews right now. Right now, it's just uploading short stories and poems uh, individually. And I have, I think, like 4 or 5 up. Um, but for me, it's just like I was thinking about it. And people are like, well, don't you want to make money on your work? And you shouldn't put everything public and copyright. And I understand all of that. And I know I don't think I'll ever, be a millionaire, and not that money is not important to me, but I've never been that way. And it was just a way for me during this quarantine, because it was created a few weeks ago, during this time, that I always write for me first, and I created this podcast for me first. But it's a way for me again to connect with my community and with people. And a lot of people know me as a playwright, but maybe not as a poet. And so it's definitely been really enriching, and it's been crazy. And like I love what you said. Like, we definitely have to have a better relationship about that. I remember the first couple of times that people approached me, and they did that this year. And my sister was there in front of me, and someone approached me, and they're like, they had just seen the CCC show, and they just introduced themselves, and he was just like, I follow your work, and that's why I'm here. And I didn't know him. I didn't know who he was. And I've also have worked, produced with Teatro Frida Kahlo Theater at their festivals, and another tremendous important place in theater that we need to make sure it stays open in Los Angeles and downtown LA. I've also was part of Short and Sweet Hollywood last year. I think I had like four plays up last year.
Yeah.
And that was a really great experience. It was out of body experience, in that it was a play about my dad at the start of him getting sick. But the rehearsals and the performance was happened as he was dying and as he died. So it was a crazy experience to watch this play with the characters, with having my father on stage and me on stage by these brilliant actors. Marlene Luna Castañeda and Gabriel Romero did a beautiful job, and Carmelita Maldonado and Alan Rice. And we won a prize. I think it was like semifinals or something like that. But again, I didn't even know they were doing that. But I love sitting in the audience and seeing all the reactions and hearing their story, and seeing how they're making. I have so many friends that lost a parent this past year or two, and it's been a struggle. We connect with each other, on special holidays, but my story, it was painful to write. It was painful to see, but it was called The Paz Girl. I'm glad that I wrote it and that it went up.
Yeah. I mean, and I would just encourage you to think about like all the people that are touched because they saw that, and
Right.
the more success you have, the more you'll get to do the show, and the more people will see it. And also think about all the people that you've been able to connect that were not connected before that, right? So in putting together projects, this person meets this person, and then they go off to do other projects. into the future that you're not even there for. I mean, it's just more art just comes out of it. So you wouldn't be able to do any of that if you weren't constantly progressing.
Right. You definitely, and I think that's what's so important and why I feel it's important to mentor the new writers that come in for CCC or, and sometimes it's the actors. We've had actors that have become writers after, in other shows. But for me, um, finding, believing, and in my voice and pushing that out there is so important. And I know some people who continue to work on the same plays or poetry or stories, and they hold on to it because they want the perfect moment, they want the perfect venue, they want everything to be lined up. And I'm definitely not perfect, but I always push myself to get my best out there. And all these experiences that I've had, I've been able to make a tremendous network, with Short and Sweet Hollywood, with Teatro Frida Kahlo, amazing artists that we, as a playwright or and as a director, you're always looking inspiration and muses for actors. And so you can't, I've definitely um, have been inspired. I remember going to seeing Miss East LA, that was inspired by Luis J. Rodriguez and written by John Cantu. I remember seeing that play, and I was so inspired by the young woman that was the lead, Marilyn. And I approached her and I told her, I didn't know her at all. And I approached her and I told her, I'm a writer and a director, and I would love to work with you one day. I would love, to have you in one of my plays. And she emailed me that night and she said thank you, and she asked for some of my work. And funny enough, I was looking to cast for a play that I wrote called Homegirls from El Otro Lado. And I sent her that play, and she accepted the role of playing Gloria Anzaldúa, a young version of Gloria Anzaldúa in the play. And and I had another actor that I love working with, Devin, who played Frida Kahlo as a homeboy. Um, I love that play. It was inspired by my friendship with Sonia and dealing with her death, but also my possible death of not taking care of myself. I've also written a number of plays and short stories and poems about Gloria Anzaldúa, who died of complications of diabetes. So a lot. I've only written a handful of like political poems, but I've always believed that the personal is political, and some of my stories and plays and poetry, have those topics, of dealing with death, of dealing with the health system, of dealing with as an artist, a struggling artist and writer, and struggling whether to tell your stories and be honest with what your experiences were. So it's definitely has been a journey, and one that I I'm hoping to continue, out of COVID, in COVID, but definitely bringing other people along the way.
Yeah. So we have a question from the audience, and it comes from Martha Rivas, and she asks, "But isn't," and she puts in quotes, "the hustle part of part of us challenging systems and infrastructures that have profited, not including us?"
Right. So in this, so what's been important to me and what I've learned from um, Seeds of Resistance, working with the woman there, Zuleika, it was always important to her that artists got paid, even if it was $5, $10, $25. If we were inviting an artist to perform at an event, they needed to get paid, and that's important to me. So again, being in a position of I don't want to say power, but like as a producer, as the coordinator of the open mic night, it's important for if I'm bringing in an artist, a featured artist, that they get paid, and no more of oh, it's promotion and so forth. I've done a lot of free events, and it's great to help organizations, but it's also very important to recognize artists, but also give them a token of payment of some sort. And sometimes it's literally come out of my own pockets. Um, with Short and Sweet Hollywood, nobody gets paid. The actors, the director, the writers, nobody's paid in that festival. But every time I had a wonderful director, Rosa Navarrete. Um, she directed A Paz Girl, and every time they met, I fed them good. They were fed dinner or lunch, and and if and I gave them. They performed at the Fullerton Open Mic Night after the festival was over, and I again gave them paid them a token. Uh, but it's really important. So that hustle, like when you are in those positions, if you're able to ask to be not ask to be paid, but to it's okay to ask to be paid. You're a worker, you're an artist, and I definitely agree that people have taken advantage of that hustle. But part of that hustle is also like working yourself to death, and I've definitely can be too driven, and I've learned to balance the past 2 years of working hard and playing hard, because even in our art we can work too hard. I'm also a content creator for CCC and a number of other shows, always running. I was their social media person and content creator, and it takes a lot of work. It seems easy, but making all those flyers and doing those posts and things like that, it takes a lot of time. But I definitely try to calm down my hustle mentality and balance it as public and as outgoing that I seem, and that I'm so busy. I definitely balance it with um, my third hometown is New York City. I go out there twice a year for writing retreats alone. I love to travel alone. I love people, but my alone time is very sacred to me as a writer and as an artist. And just I get inspired of during in those times. And I'm also very cheap, so I stay like at the YMCA, but it's literally right across the street from Central Park. And I remember my brother almost died when he heard that I was doing that, and he was in town. He's like, "Get over here!" But I'm never in my place only just to write. It's just a small twin bed, a wooden desk, and I can literally see Central Park right in front of me. It's not bad.
Not bad at all. So we're coming up on the hour. I really appreciate your time, your presence, your spirit, and all the work that you've done. Is there any like advice you have? I mean, it's kind of interesting. I always ask people advice, but you actually have something they can plug into. But we'll drop the links below. But is there any advice you have for people in this time to where they should be at?
Yeah, don't be afraid of what other people are going to think of you. As long as you're secure with yourself, and you're proud of the work that you're producing, and if you're not proud of it yet and it needs work, then do the research, take the time, do those write as much as possible, and then where the work is in the revision, is in the edits. It's having before a play goes up. I'm involved with 2 writing groups. One, like, we've been meeting for the past 8 years, and another one we just started a year ago. But even outside of those groups, 12 other people have read my plays. So definitely keep writing, but also do the work. Own your work, own the whole package of you as an artist. Do what you want. Like if you want to be a playwright, if you want to be write poetry or show. Like before, I had a hard time speaking in public, but the only way I got out of it was just doing it and letting people know the arts and the talents that you possess and the skills, and owning it. Not in a cocky way, but just owning your art. So definitely follow me. I have a website. My long name. I'll put it in Matt's video comment. Elvia Susana Rubalcava. I have a podcast, Writings Beneath My Tongue, and you can follow CCC, Chicanas, Cholas, and Chisme, and our podcast, Love Locuras Arte. We'd love to have you, Matt, whenever you want to come. And yeah, just stay connected. Social media is really important. You're responsible for your own image, and for the work that you do, and you just need to do your best job. And it's okay for those moments when you just need to chill. You don't need to accomplish or be super productive during this quarantine time. Just be true to you. What makes you happy? And sometimes what makes me happy is watching episodes of Golden Girls in bed for a couple hours, you know? But it's just balancing that time.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Elvia, for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll be talking.
All right, thank you.